help us that it's working.
Yes, well, I want to welcome everyone to this focus this month on the history of the Bibles with Alexander Schick, and very, very excited to be with you. We had excitement just getting online here, didn't we? The internet went down for you in Germany, in your area, so we're on a cell phone, but that's going to work. And Alexander is the founder of the Traveling Qumran and Bible Exhibition. And I had the wonderful opportunity to spend some time with you and your wife. And her name is Caroline. And as you reminded me, there's a song that's been written just about her, right? Sweet
Neil
Caroline.
Diamond, Sweet Caroline. That's right, sir.
That's right. Well, we're going to have a good time here. We've got people that have questions, and some people might not know what the Historical Faith Society is, and let me just share with you. As some of you, this might be the first time that you've seen me. I'm Tim Mahoney. I am the founder of Thinking Man Films, and I created a series of films called Patterns of Evidence. And we've made a film on the Exodus, on the Moses controversy, which is about the writing of the Bible. And then we've done the Red Sea Miracle 1 and 2. And now we're working on Journey to Mount Sinai 1 and 2 that'll be coming out this year. And in the midst of all this, I have met so many scholars, and we just started to sense that we needed to have more opportunity to discuss and go deeper on certain subject matters about the Bible. And the Historical Faith Society, its focus is really helping to preserve the historical credibility of the Bible, to promote it through films, and to pass it on to the next generation. And so that's the reason why we've created this society. And each month we have events and we have focuses. And this month, as we said, it's been on the history of the Bibles. And there's a series of videos that come out. And you can sign up for the Historical Faith Society at historicalfaithsociety.com and just become a part of this. And for some people, they're patrons and they're supporting us. They're supporting the work. And others are supporting the work of Patterns of Evidence Foundation, which is the development of these new films on the Bible. So, well, anyway, let's get started. Alexander's encouraged me to give a little bit of background because not everybody, we've got some new people joining us from around the world. And Alexander, I just want to say thank you again for what you're doing. Let's just talk about the reason. Why is it important that there are exhibits about the Bible? Why is that important for people to see the connection through history, the authenticity of the scriptures?
Yeah, one of the good morning, good evening, everybody. Here is now very late, and your question is very important because one of the most critical questions from people is how trustful is this word, which is called the Holy Scripture or the Word of God. Many people only look at this book as an old ancient book with a nice cover. Okay, it's very old, but it has nothing to say for today, and it has no meaning for us today, beside perhaps the 10 Commandments as a founding for some national states. But the big question is the text trustful or is it not trustful? When I was a very young man, I grew up in a Christian family. My family is coming from the Billy Graham movement. And I asked me all the time, why should I read the Bible and listen to the Reverend with his dark cloth if it's an old book and it has no historical, foundation? So for me as a young rebel, because I had to read the Bible, and today I love my mother that she forced me to do this, because it's very good to learn as a child the Bible. But I said to myself, I will leave when I'm 18. This is old stuff. It's not for my life. But then I started to look, is it historical, fitted in the right situation? It's trustful, transmitted. This was for me as a critical thinking man, the most important. I said, if this can be proven, then I would be willing to listen to the message too. So I think this is a reason for many people. They are looking to the Bible as a book they know. They have it with many dust on the cover in their shelf, but they don't know the content. And if they know the content, then they're asking, can this how to say it in English? Sorry, reliable. It's trustful what is written there.
Yeah,
And this was the
reliable.
reason. This was the reason for my life personal to search after these things, and I was so much impressed what I have seen by others who worked about the subject, that I decided, or it really had also be a little bit. My mother, she told me, you have now so much experience with scholars and you have so much artifacts. This you have to tell other people, because everybody has the same question: is this really the word of God? And has it, is it rooted in history or not?
Yes, that's a very good question. And so this past month, we've actually looked at some of the scrolls, and it was really, I think, a good series of videos for us to talk about this. And the first video we made was the Bible and Israel, and you tell the story a little bit about this connection with the Bible and well, I should say the connection with the finding of Dead Sea Scrolls and the founding of the nation of Israel. And I never knew about that connection before.
Okay.
I never knew that there was a connection there. But let's talk a little bit about that. And by the way, this is your chance, if you're in the audience, to ask questions. This is not just the two of us talking. The reason why we're doing this right now is so you can ask Alexander questions or myself questions. And if we think we can, we'll try to answer them to the best of our ability. But Logan is helping us with in the behind the scenes. But if you have questions you want to put up there, you can ask questions, and we'll try to answer them as we go along here. So going back to this connection, maybe some people didn't see the video, but let's talk about that. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, it was at a very significant time in the history. It was in the in 1948, isn't that correct? 47, in that time period.
Exactly. It was the time when the British had occupied the Holy Land, and there had been the fightings between the Jews and Arabs, who will be, about the founding of the state of Israel after 2,000 years. And for me, there are several points very much important. The first thing is that a Muslim shepherd found the Hebrew scrolls. Mm-hmm. So this is because today the Islam is claiming it's their land, and it's the land of the Qumran and the Prophet Muhammad. And a Muslim shepherd found these scrolls who tell the opposite of the story. The Bible is much older than the Quran, and he found these scrolls. He did not to know what to do with them. He can't read, and sometimes the people are saying they use the leather for a shoemaker. This is nonsense. They brought it to a souvenir shop, and he discovered these must be very ancient, and the history is a little bit difficult. But what is main importance from the 7 scrolls which had been found it can be 1945 up to 1947. It's not really shown in the moment. But what's important, a Jewish scholar, his name was Eliezer Zokenik. He bought the scrolls in November 1947 at the day when today we call it United Nations, was sitting together, and they did the participation plan so that there will be Jewish and an Arab state. And exactly at this 29th of November of 1947, at this morning, Professor Zokenik bought in Bethlehem, which was at this time, of course, Arab, only Arabs lived there. It was very dangerous to go there as a Jew to buy the scrolls. He came back, and when he sat in his office, he was sitting in his office and reading in 3 of the scrolls, which he just bought from an Armenian dealer. His son came in and said, America's United States said yes for the plan. Soviet Union said yes. So in the moment when he was reading the scrolls, where the prophecy fulfilled that after 2,000 years, the Jews who had been spread all over the world come back, and there will be a nation. They, at this moment, in the radio loudspeaker, he was hearing the moment when they did the vote. So that was unbelievable. It must be a miracle that exactly at this day, so nobody can tell me this is only by chance. You say it in English, so it's
Yeah.
really in the plan of God.
Yes. And there's a verse here. Who has heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall a land be born in one day? Shall a nation be brought forth in one moment? For as soon as Zion was in labor, she brought forth her children.
Yeah,
Isaiah
this is
66.
the last chapter of Isaiah, and it's in the scroll they found is exactly this verse, that in one day a nation will be born. This is really a miracle, and it was without no discussion written 2,000 years earlier. So this is a real prophecy. Nobody can deny it.
Yeah.
You only can say this verse doesn't belong to Israel, but this is for me unacceptable, because you see this verse and you see what's happening in the history. And many, I know from some Christians who knew this verse, they saw what happened at this day, and because of this, they become changing their life, because they said God is really acting today in history.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think that that's why the Dead Sea Scrolls have been so important. Now, some people might know or seen the earlier films I made, but I want to visit Israel Finkelstein, and I've talked to him about the Dead Sea Scrolls in the past, and I talked with him about the fact that there are these prophecies that were made, and that in Deuteronomy, Moses talks about the covenant, and he says that not if you break the covenant, but when you break the covenant, you will be destroyed as a nation. You will be scattered throughout the nations of the world. You'll be persecuted, but you'll return in the future. And what Israel Finkelstein said about that was that he said, well, that was written after the event of the Babylonian Empire, destroyed it. So it was a way of the priestly people having control over the people. And I said, no, I think it's a law. I think it's a rule, because it's happened twice. It happened after the Romans were conquered and Israel was scattered. And then look again, here they returned again back to the land. So it's a very powerful principle, I think, that I'm seeing. These covenants, and a covenant is a legal agreement that God has made with the people of Israel. There's markers throughout history that we can see that they're being fulfilled. So once again, if anyone has any questions, now is the time to ask. I'd like to ask you, do you have any favorites? Oh, what was
May I
that?
just answer? You just mentioned Professor Israel Finkelstein.
Yeah.
I think it's a big tragedy. Professor Finkelstein is a very famous scholar. He has the name Israel in his name, and he believes nothing from the Bible. So he once was asked, why you're going home and celebrating Pesach, if you're saying that all these stories are fairy tales and legends from the old days. And he said, yes, it's a nice story, and you can celebrate this, but I don't believe in this, what is standing there. So this is very terrible to see that a really leading Jewish scholar is denying his own history, denying the book of faith in which he is founded, and that he has so much influence all over the world, that his books are read by students in universities all over, and they're saying, oh, you see, this famous scholar is saying the Bible is not true. So it must be true because the scholar is the saying.
Yeah.
But as someone said, even if a famous scholar is speaking nonsense, it is still nonsense. And this you must see. The problem is if someone is denying that God is existing and acting in history, if this is the presumption he has, or his own law for his life, his biography, there can be no prophecy, there can be no miracles. So everything in the books of the Bible must be fairy tales.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say really God is existing and is doing miracles still today, then you will be very much astonished if you read the Bible and see the finger of God in the clock of the world and how he's acting today.
Yeah. When you've gone on these exhibits and brought them to different communities, what's some of the reaction that people have had as they've seen the collection that you've had?
One lady came once to me and said, "Oh, this is a very nice exhibition. You're the founder of it." I said, "Yes." And she said, "You really believe in all the things which are standing in the Bible?" I said, "Yes, I believe." And I show you in the exhibition many examples how you can see that the text is really trustful, transmitted. So this is one thing what could happen, that people saying it's very nice, the history of the book as a book, but that they have no connection to the content of the Holy Bible. And I have other experience. The Bible says the word of God is never coming back alone. So it will have a reaction by people, a positive or a negative. So what was for me the most beautiful reactions, when people are coming and telling me they went through the exhibition, they had been very much astonished how the Bible was transmitted, the history in scripture, the history in printing, and that they had been so much seen how God is acting here, that really understood this is not a normal book. This is a book of God, and it's a love letter which God gave us when he's telling about that Jesus is coming to give his life for our sins, and that he will save us, and that they now started not only to watch to the Bible as a book, but to read it as a love letter from God, so that these old writings became very, very actual in their life today after many hundreds of years.
We have a question here. What is one of the biggest impacts the Dead Sea Scrolls have had on your faith? What is one of the biggest impacts the Dead Sea Scrolls have had on your faith?
There are several impacts. The first impact is how trustful the Tanakh, the Old Testament, how we call it, is transmitted. So you can say after 75 years of research of the Dead Sea Scrolls that the basis of the text is transmitted very, very good. Summa cum laude, we say. Wonderful done. And if you think how much mistakes could be happen, because hundreds of scribes copied the holy text over hundreds of years, verse by verse, letter by letter, and if we both would write down the whole Bible with our hand, we would make a lot of mistakes. But they knew it's a holy scripture, and it was holy, so they even did not change. I don't know if you know, in my youth, it was told to me, then Buffalo Bill was making his Wild West show. He first did the battle against one Indian, and after all the shows he made in America, so it was told to me, they told that he fighted against a whole population of Indians. So the text grew up, the legend become more and more, bigger. And this was the same, they said, with the Bible, that the text will growing up like, telling here on the fire, sitting there at the night and there, and adding this and this. And then you have the scrolls, which are 1,000 years older than the oldest total existing copies of the Tanakh, of that Old Testament, and you see there are no changes. And this is what is unbelievable. Then the Dead Sea Scrolls had been found exactly at this day. There had been a new edition of the, I think it's EVS, the English Bible, and only at 13 places in Isaiah, they did a small changing, because the Isaiah scroll, the big Isaiah scroll from Qumran, had a better text in 13 places to bring the first text very clearly. And this was all what happened. So this is unbelievable, for hundreds of years that the text has not changed. This is the first impact, the trustful transmission of the Old Testament. And the second one is where all the people get big eyes, the impact for the New Testament. To explain this, the name of Jesus is never found in any of the fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls. But these are the documents where are written in the same time, or in the same area, in the same centuries as the Christian movement under Rabbi Jesus started. And you have many words of Jesus, which are, if you hear them, you're asking, could this told by Jesus, has this perhaps written down much later? So, for example, the Gospel of John was very much heavily debated, especially because a German scholar, his name was Rudolf Bultmann, he said this Gospel of John is very Gnostic. You are reading there the dualism between light and darkness. You are reading there, you will do the, was heißt Wahrheit auf Deutsch, auf Englisch? You will do the truth. This is not normal. You say you believe the truth, but not you will do the truth. And they said this is not Jewish. And then they found the Qumran scrolls and they saw that exactly the same dualism, son of light, son of darkness, like in Gospel of John, son of light, son of darkness, the same expression are there. Or that they're standing there, you will do the truth and not only you will believe the truth. So what for Bultmann was a Greek Gnostic thinking is in reality deep-rooted Jewish thinking. But you only know it today because of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And that you have a lot of collections about messianic prophecies, which the group collected, and you can see how they thought about the Messiah. And this is very important for the New Testament. Sorry, sir?
Okay, so we have, that's very good. The other thing, another question coming in is, do we have a good identification on who wrote the DSCs? Now, I'm not sure if I know.
The nickname or the short version is DSS, Dead Sea Scrolls. This I think the sir is meaning.
Yeah.
Okay. There are many theories about from where are these scrolls coming. Some are saying these are the scrolls that came from Jerusalem, from the temple, that they had been, this was the library of the temple, which had been taken out from the temple when the Romans came in 780 AD. And the people knew they will destroy the temple, so they took the temple library and brought it to the Dead Sea. But if you ever have been in Qumran, and you go into the center of Qumran, you stand on the plateau and you see on the right side cave 4A and cave 4B and cave 5. But on the plateau, if you go there, there's the east wall. And if you go down by this wall, you have cave 7, cave 9, and cave 10. So to go to these caves, you must go through the settlement of Qumran. What is this showing us? The settlement has to do something with the scrolls. So I follow the scholars who say it's not possible that these scrolls all are coming from Jerusalem, because you don't bring pottery from the Dead Sea to Jerusalem to put their inside in the jars, the scrolls, and bring them to the Dead Sea, because we have the same jars which are in the caves, the same jars they had been found in the settlement under DeVoe in the 50s. And under Professor Randall Price, who was last year in your Faith Society, he found such jars by his excavation, and the pottery is the same like in the caves. So the connection is between the settlement and the caves. So the scrolls must be a library, but not every scroll has been written in Qumran, because, for example, the biblical scrolls, which are coming from the first part of the 2nd century, they are older than the settlement. So this is they had been brought as masterpieces. You say in English, the authority copy to. And the last thing, which is very new, because of the big discussion, there was scientific. They looked how is the ink. So they took from the Hodayot scroll, this is the thanks hymns, the roll for the hymns from cave 1. They took a little bit ink from the scroll and they tested in the laboratory, and they found, you must know, the ink had been to mix with water in the times of Jesus and earlier. So you can see still today how the water has it more chrome or more magnesium. So water exists of minerals. And it was very amazing when they tested this ink from the Hodayot scroll. They found the water which was used for making the ink has very much to do with the Dead Sea, but not with the water from Jerusalem. So this was one of the best confessions, that the scrolls has to do something with the settlement of Qumran. And I follow all these scholars that these scrolls are coming from there. I know all the arguments. There had been found no fragments in the settlement, but this is not true. I was with James Chartsworth, who worked with DeVoe in the 50s. And he found the last Bedouin who worked with DeVoe. And he told them, and Chartsworth totally came excited to me and told me the story when we met in Jerusalem. He said, Alex, did you know what yesterday when we did for German TV, the meeting with the Bedouin, he told me that they get a payment as worker from DeVoe by the excavation, $1.50 for a whole day. But for a fragment in the size of a stamp, they receive $10 or more from the dealer of the Bedouins. So he told Chartsworth, they found several fragments in the excavation, but these they brought it to the dealer because it was 10 times more than the salary for one day. So this is the reason why no fragments are coming from the settlement, but the jars are identical. So to answer the short question is a long way. They are coming from Qumran. There was a library and also scriptorium to write down. They had the inkwell, so it's really clear they are coming from them. But we have no name in the scroll who write this, like in the medieval Bibles. There's no name. So this we can't say, but it's from this area.
Yeah. Now we've got another question. Speaking about what are some steps the scribes took to ensure the accuracy of the biblical text in transmission? What are some of the steps that they took?
Okay, I need the spectacle because I have my mobile phone here. It's very small for me to read it.
Yeah, we had a technical difficulty before. You were on a computer, but the internet went down. But fortunately, your backup was your mobile phone. So, okay, what were some?
The internet is still not here, but the mobile phone is working.
Yes.
Okay, some people are doing a big mistake. They are using what is standing in the Talmud about what the scribes has to do and compare it with the Dead Sea Scrolls. If you go to the Shrine of the Book and you had been in the center and you see the copy of the Isaiah scroll at the cylinder, you see a stick on top of the shrine of the box, which is from a Torah scroll to put it to roll it up. You remember when you have been there?
Yep.
But this is anachronistic. In the time of Jesus, there had been no sticks in the scrolls to roll up and roll. If you look on the backside of the scrolls, are very dark by transpiration of the hands. So it was different way to use it. And the laws which had been transmitted in the Talmud for the scribe, how he has to handle with the scrolls, scholars believe much more dating to the 2nd century after Jesus, that the text was more fluently in the time before. But they always knew this is a holy scripture. And even in the centuries before Jesus, they really transmitted it very trustful. We don't know which law they had at this time. In the later times, they counted even the letters. But from this, we have no information from the time, like about how the Qumran scribes did this. Mm-hmm. But they corrected the text. In one of the videos, you photographed a passage where I showed you, look, there was a corrector and he found that a part of the text is missing and he wrote it between the lines. So they corrected the text, and this is really amazing how good the work was done.
And I think going back to your comments with people saying that the Bible was not reliable, I think the Dead Sea Scrolls actually proved just the opposite, that the Bible had been accurately transmitted throughout the centuries. And so it was very comforting, I think, for many people to see that and to realize that. And I think it's also something to be said for the faithfulness of those Jewish scribes that faithfully and painstakingly, transmitted and protected the Torah throughout the centuries in all these different books. I mean, I think oftentimes when you find reserves, it's because what I mean by that is when you find scrolls and caves and things like that, what possibly happened, and I think the people at Qumran were all killed, weren't they? They hid those scrolls in the caves, and some of them were there because they had gotten older and they were being placed in a safe place, but they were not going to be used anymore. But what I'm saying is that the people at Qumran I believe they all lost their lives. I think that's the assumption, wasn't it, that the Romans came and took out the whole community?
You know, then Yigal Yadin was excavating Masada, and you know Yigal Yadin, he's the son of Professor Sokenik, who had the first scrolls bought at this wonderful day, as we spoke about. He excavated Masada and he found scrolls there too. And what is very impressive, he found a special scroll, which was only used by the people living on the Dead Sea. These are the prayers for the Sabbath. So when he found this scroll at Masada, it was identical to the text, which had been totally unknown in earlier times, the same text which we had found some years earlier in Cave 4 of Qumran. So he said, sorry, if we have on both sides, both areas, the same text, it must, and it belongs to a special group. That means, and this was his theory, and I think it's very good. You're true. The Essenes saw the Romans are coming. They hide their biggest treasure, the library, in the caves. And some scrolls they took with them, and they went down to the south, via Engedi to Masada, where the rebels had been, and they went there. And they hoped, of course, to come back to take out their scrolls, the library. But when the Romans captured Masada in 72 or 73, there's a big discussion. But nevertheless, after 70, when they took the Masada, you know, the famous history that nearly all the people had died by suicide on Masada. And so the history, or the secret, that there are scrolls hidden some miles more north by the settlement, had been gone away, and if they had not been the Muslim shepherd who then found it. But he was not the only who found it. We have some more stories from the 8th century that also a shepherd by Jericho went into a cave and he found psalm scrolls. This is very similar to the story we knew from the 40 years. So in different times they found such scrolls. You have you have the history about this, and this is very amazing. I just lost your picture. You're still there? Okay.
Giving you a close-up.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we've got another question. I'm going to jump over to Mary's, Logan. What percentage of the Dead Sea Scrolls that have been found at this point are of biblical content versus rules or perhaps secular content? What percentage is of biblical?
Okay, when we speak about the Dead Sea Scrolls, these are not only the scrolls in the area of Qumran. You know, they are the scrolls from Masada. We have the scrolls from the 2nd century from the Bar Kokhba caves. We have from Wadi Muraba'at and some more. But together, these are 1,050 scrolls. And around 300, so 30%, you can say, are biblical texts or are passages from the Bible who had been written in text. So this is the biblical part. Then you have a lot of text which we have not in the Hebrew Bible, but you have in the Greek translation, which is called the Septuagint, and also in the Ethiopian Bible. So, for example, in the Greek Old Testament, in the Septuagint, you have not 150 psalms, but 151 psalms. These psalm, which is today included in the Catholic Bibles, in all Greek Bibles from the Greek Orthodox Bibles, and this was not known in Hebrew, but in Qumran they found it in Hebrew. So it is an old text, but it did not fit in the canon which we have from the Hebrew canon. So this is pseudo-biblical text, as we could call it. And then more than 30% are totally unknown text, not secular content. You have no contracts, you have no marriage, no salary, things like this. You only have commentaries for the Bible. You have exegetical book, who is the Messiah, what you have to do with the temple and things like this. So it's really religious literature, which the scholars found there, or the Bedouins and the scholars deciphered then.
Mm-hmm. We have another question from Dave. He says, I had the opportunity to go to Qumran 4 years ago, And at that time, they found rooms that they identified as specific scribe writing rooms. Are you aware of this, and do you agree?
This is a very nice question, but the discovery was not done 4 years ago. If you're in Qumran, you have the big tower, and if you go, then you have something like a hall where we believe there was a library. On the left side is a very long room, and if you roll up the Isaiah scroll, it's nearly fit into the room when you roll it up. So the Isaiah scroll is 7 meter 35. So the room is around 8 meter. This is a large room, and there they found a furniture, banks, and there's a big discussion about if this could be writing tables, or what could be another explanation. These had been tables where for the preparation of the scrolls, they had been sewn together with a needle and pin to put the sheets to become a scroll. You must fit it together. You understand what I'm speaking about?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we believe this was done on the banks, and why we believe that it's a scriptorium or writing place, even the scriptorium is more a word which is known for monasteries, is the reason that in the room outside from the second floor, 2 inkwells had been falling down and 1 inkwell had been falling into the room. So
so they actually had an inkwell, or an area where they were creating ink.
No. You must know, in whole Jerusalem, we have till today in the Wall Museum, for example, only 1 inkwell in the Jewish Quarter, but in Qumran we have 3 inkwells. This is amazing. So this shows up there had been some activity of scribes. Yes. Mm-hmm. So you have inkwells, you have tables. By the tables you can discuss had been there sitting. I tested them. One of the tables is in the storage room of the Museum of Amman. The curator is a good friend of mine, and I asked him, can you open the box for me? I will test it. So he opened the box. It's still not on view today in exhibitions. And I had photos, but I'm not allowed to publish the photos. But you really can see how brittle it is. It's like cement. You say gips. What is
gypsum?
Gypsum, exactly. Yeah. So some people are saying they had been sitting on the desk, but if you're doing this, it will be cracking because it's going like this. It's very, let me see here. It's going like this. It's going, like a V, you can say. So this is the table. It's very small here. So it only could be used for sewn together the scrolls. Yeah. But the inkwell shows exactly it had been a room for scribes. And you must think about they had only the light of the oil lamps. And if you see how wonderful the script is done, you really are amazed how they did the work. So this had really technical trained professional scribes to do the holy job. This is for me unbelievable. I would say, thinking about, it's a dark room because windows, there had been no windows. It only was lighted by oil lamps. To do this, it must be very terrible for your eyes and for the fingers too.
Yeah. I was going to try to have all sorts of photographs here, but we just moved after 23 years. We moved our offices, and all the technology is not hooked up for me. And so I'm actually doing this broadcast from home. But so we were going to show some of these images. Sometimes it's hard to know because people are asking questions that we don't know what to anticipate. Here's another question. I'm going to jump over to Hal and Barbara. Mr. Mahoney, what was Israel Finkelstein's response to those proofs? And I'll tell you what it was. He just sat there and looked at me and he just stared. And I think he was thinking, because when I told him that when the proofs we're talking about I believe, as I've looked at this, that these are covenants that God has made. He's made these covenants, and they're legal, they're binding. In fact, as we move forward in the next films coming up here, not the next ones that are coming out, but the ones in the following year, it's going to be about the law of God. And these covenants, I think, they apply throughout the centuries. and the same covenant. So if Moses is telling the Israelites, not if, but when you break the covenant, that you're going to be destroyed as a nation, you're going to be scattered around the nations, that you're going to be persecuted, but in the future you will return. I saw that as a pattern of evidence that you could look for in history, and you see it in the Babylonian time period, and you see it in Rome, and then once again, how does it connect? We see it with Israel being scattered after 70 A.D. when the Romans scattered the nation amongst the nations, and 2,000 years later, in 1948, in one day, the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled that you had there. And they come back to become a nation. That's a legal, I think that's God operating history with his legal agreements with. So anyway, going back to this, so Israel Finkelstein, after I said that, he basically just looked at me for a long time, and I thought, I'm getting too close. It's getting too hot for him. I'm going to move on to something else now. So we have another question here. Why did the scribes write the name of God in Paleo-Hebrew in the Dead Sea Scrolls? They didn't. They wrote the name in Paleo-Hebrew. Do you know that question? Oh, we got a frozen frame there. Okay. Hopefully we can get Alexander back. Okay, we're just going to hold on for a minute while we get Alexander back in. This can happen overseas, as we have. So while we're waiting for Alexander to get back online, he might have to rejoin. Okay, well, let's see if he can rejoin the call. Yes, when I've been out doing these interviews, looks like he might be coming in now. No, when I've gone out to these interviews, it's been interesting to see how as we work our way through the scripture, oftentimes people, when I do an interview, people have an answer that they give. It's sort of a pat answer to certain things. But, I've been sometimes working on a multiple of questions. There's usually a second answer and I should say a second question and a third question and a fourth question that relates to that. And oftentimes the scholars never get past the first question. And as we dig deeper, and that's what I think the patterns of evidence films do, is then you start to understand more clearly. And if you listen to Israel Finkelstein, one of the things that's interesting about him is that he'll say that there's no evidence for the Israelites on the background of I think it's 12th or 13th century. And so what he's doing is he is correct. If you look at that time period, which I would call the time of Ramesses, which many people call it that, there is no evidence for the Israelites in that time period. Very little evidence, and that's the reason why so many people are opposed to suggesting that the Israelites were there. But once again, as you know, during these films that we've made with patterns of evidence, if you look for the pattern, it shows up earlier. That's where we're finding the pattern. So that has been the approach that I've taken with patterns, is to look at the scripture and then look for the pattern. And that's why I love the Dead Sea Scrolls, because there's so many things about prophecy that those scrolls were sealed. They were sealed in those caves for such a long time that they made a big statement when they came out, and a lot of things that had happened. Let's see here. Let me know if you have any backup. All right. So we're waiting to get Alexander Schick back on. We're not sure what happened. He lost the internet connection right before we were going to do the broadcast, and then now we've lost the cellular connection. So let me look here at some of these other questions, and I might not be the one to basically. Oh, here he's back. Well, good. I can only do this for so long. Oh, did we lose him again? Nope, he's coming back in.
Okay, good.
Right,
Now
gotcha.
I'm very sorry. The distance is too far, but
yeah.
Now it's working. Okay, still my mobile phone, but we try it again.
Yes. Robert Cronin has a question. Were there Essenes, is it Essene communities and their libraries, scribe activities elsewhere in Persia or Parthian Empire, and also in various Greek and Carthage or Roman settlements around the Mediterranean? Were there any other Essene? Am I pronouncing that right? Is it Essene?
Yeah, Essenes. Yeah, that's right, sir.
Communities, libraries. Were there anywhere else, or were they only at the Dead Sea Scroll? Were they only in the Dead Sea area?
Okay, in Cairo, there's a Jewish synagogue. It's called the Ben Ezra Synagogue, and Salomon Schechter found at the end of the 19th century there a Genisa. A Genisa is a room where you're putting inside scrolls you're no longer using in a synagogue. And he found thousands of fragments in this Genisa, which are today in Cambridge University. And there they found, for example, the Damascus document, which is a Dead Sea Scroll which had been found 50 years earlier than in the cave of Qumran. So the Damascus document from the Essenes. You have it in many, many copies. It was something like a foundation scroll or a scripture for the community. So this shows not that there had been libraries around the Mediterranean Sea, but you have to ask, in the time of Jesus, Qumran was not the only center of the Essenes. I believe there had been Essenes who lived in Qumran, but they spread all over the country. Josephus is telling us it was the second largest. Josephus is the historical writer of the Jews.
And yeah, Josephus,
exactly.
Yeah.
And he's telling us that they had 4,000 members by the Essenes. The Pharisees had 6,000. So it had been the second largest group in ancient times of Judaism. And in Qumran, neither 4,000 people could live, perhaps 100, 120, that's all. So they had an own quarter in Jerusalem. It's called the Essene Quarter. I believe they also lived in Galilee, because in several speeches of Jesus, he is really speaking to the Essenes. If you know the Dead Sea Scrolls and the content, you really can see that the message of Jesus was also sometimes against the Essene teaching. And then the Essenes later had been killed by the Romans, and only some had survived and escaped. You have to ask where they had escaped. And it seems that some of them could go to Egypt, and that the belief of the Essenes and in the systems of two messiahs and what they had in the doctrines went over to the Jews in Egypt. So this could be one reason why we have the Damascus document in the Ben Ezra synagogue, and was 50 years earlier found than the Damascus document under the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are the older copies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see here. Lily says she came in late, so forgive me if this has been addressed, but we haven't talked about it, Lily. Will any Dead Sea Scrolls be exhibited in the States anytime soon? Do you know of anything about that?
I know that there's the Department of Cleaner Shore. She just retired. These are the people responsible for preparing the scrolls for exhibitions. And I guess in America, yes, there will be no problem. But in Europe, for example, they will not come, because the scrolls which had been not bought by the Hebrew University, like the first scrolls from Cave 1, they belong to the state of Israel. But all the other scrolls which had been found later, when the Jordanian did occupy the northern part of the Dead Sea, these are Jordanian scrolls, even if they are occupied. So we wanted to have them in Germany, and the Israelis asked that the Dead Sea Scrolls get a permission, or not a permission, a permit, that they have the diplomatic state, so they can come to Germany and they can leave Germany without confiscation. Because the last time before this, when the scrolls had been in Ontario in Canada, there was a huge activity from the Palestinians who said, these scrolls are Palestinian property and you're not allowed to give them to the Israelis. They had to be confiscated and to give to us. So this is a political problem for bringing the scrolls abroad. Another problem is not political, is that they are too much fragile. So the best would be for the Dead Sea Scrolls to put them back again in the caves of the Dead Sea, so they could survive. So you must have a temperature like you have been in the laboratory with where they have a humidifier and things like this to make it similar to the Climax which was found in the caves.
Yeah.
So, and even if one of the scrolls had been in US, it will not become 20 years again, because then it has to rest for 1 decade or longer before it could go to an exhibit again, because only the transpiration of people will make problems for the scrolls.
So
But
I never knew that.
Yeah, today everything is digital in the internet, so you can see them there.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
go to Israel, to the Shrine of the Book.
Yeah, the Shrine of the Book is a very important place for people to go to and to see that. Question, could you explain the minor... Oop, we lost...
Also, some of the fragments are on view in the new museum of Amman. They built a new museum, archaeological museum in Amman, and they have a wonderful fragment there. It's called the Floregium from Cave 4. This is not a scroll. It's like a paper you have in a book, this size, and this is a collection of verses in the Bible which speak about the Messiah. So they wrote down what is in this chapter standing about the Messiah and what is in this book standing, and they make a collection of prophecies about the Messiah. This you can see in Amman in the Archaeological Museum. Sorry, sir?
That's okay. Could you explain the minority text and majority text? Which one is better? I'm not sure. I've never heard of that, minority text or majority text.
The man who did the question, he must make one point more clear. He's speaking about the New Testament or about the Old Testament, so that we exactly know what he wants to know. Perhaps he could rewrite the question and you go ahead and he write it down again with a more specific explanation.
Wait for that question to get rewritten. William wants to know, what is Professor Ehrman from the University of North Carolina position regarding the proof you have alluded to from the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Professor Ehrman, he is a New Testament scholar, and he's coming from a very strong evangelical background, and he lost his faith totally, because he's saying how people can suffer. How could this be a God of love? He is a brilliant scholar for New Testament. He's writing many bestsellers in America, but his theories are not new. He always saying you have too much changes in the New Testament. But then you must say, dear Professor Ehrman, even your teacher, Bruce Metzger, told you in Princeton that there are a lot of, variants in the New Testament, but this is not the proof that the text is not trustful transmitted. It only shows that many scribes did use the text, and of course they did mistakes. And when at one day 3 persons wrote down, for example, the Gospel of John, one in Antiochia, one in Rome, and one in Jerusalem, they all did mistakes in the text, but not in every, how say it in English? They all did mistakes in the text, but not in every text. The same mistake has been taken place, because 3 different scribes, 3 different areas. So that means if in one text there's a mistake, 2 texts has the right text. So what is the work of a textual scholar? He has to look what is standing in text A, in text B, and text C, and to compare it, and then to see what is the original reading of this verse. So but Ehrman, he would say the text is very good transmitted by the New Testament, but Ehrman is not in Old Testament. We'll be speaking now about the New Testament. And he's saying, okay, the legends are very good transmitted, because he says the oldest texts of the New Testament are from the mid-3rd century or end of the 3rd century or even 4th century by him. And he said, all this before had been legends. You have nothing original from the time of Jesus, and it had been collected. A very famous thing to make it understandable is that Jerusalem was captured by the Romans in 7 AD. They destroyed the temple, like Josephus wrote down. But you have in Matthew, for example, Jesus is speaking that the temple will be destroyed. But Jesus was living not at 7 AD, he was living around 30 AD when he did this prophecy. So they are saying this prophecy Jesus never told. It was told much later, at the day when the Romans came, and you see, oh, there's a lot of smoke in the air, these are the horses of the legion, we will have big problems. So it could be only at this day. But then I'm always asking these scholars, what you are doing with the prophecy about Capernaum. You know, Capernaum is also mentioned as an area which will be totally destroyed by Jesus. He said, Chorazim, Bethsaida, Capernaum, they saw the most miracles of him.
Did
of
you
the
say,
Son of God.
are you saying Capernaum?
Capernaum, yes.
Capernaum, okay, yeah.
How you tell it? Oh, sorry. In English, it's different. How you call it?
I was wanting to make sure we understood. Capernaum.
We can do it Capharnaum. Kafar is a village, and Nahum is the name of the prophet. So this is the name of, we call it Capernaum. You said Capharnaum?
Yeah, I think so. I think
okay.
we know.
The small village where the mother-of-law from St. Peter lived.
Okay.
Okay. So this had been the town where 30% of the miracles of the New Testament happened. But it didn't. But even if all these miracles happened, the inhabitants didn't become followers of Jesus. So he said, if these miracles would be happen at Zidon and Tyros, which is like St. Paul, which is like Viva Las Vegas and some other areas which are not so good, the people would do repentance and would becoming born again followers of the Messiah. But it happened in your town. You didn't accept me as the Messiah, so all this area will be destroyed. And if you go today with a group to this wonderful white synagogue in Capernaum, you will. I always ask, what do you think? It's a wonderful green area. How many monks lived here? And then the people are very amazed when I go there and sit and show them, look, this is the only monk, the monk from the Franciscan, on the other side, one monk from the Greek Orthodox Church. This is all. And this is for me also a fulfillment of the prophecy. And if the Bart Ehrman and other people are saying the legend is very trustful transmitted, I ask these scholars, what you telling me about this prophecy, who was fulfilled 800 years after the writing of the New Testament? How can you explain this to me? And a scholar like the Bart Ehrman in Germany, he said to me, what is Capernaum? Jerusalem is only important. I don't want to speak about Capernaum. I said, but this is not very good, because all the towns and all the prophecies have the same right. You must look, but you have no explanation for this prophecy, how it could be happened when Jesus said this. So the text must be true.
Yeah. Let's go to another question here. Lily has one. I heard a scholar, possibly Joan Taylor, say she thought the scrolls that have been found are only the tip of the iceberg, meaning that would be a lot more scrolls that are hidden. What are your thoughts about that?
Joan Taylor, she is a very nice Qumran scholar. I totally agree, but we are no prophets. So yes, we hope that there will be many more scrolls. You had Randall Price on your program. He had found an unwritten part of a Dead Sea Scroll. Hanan Eshel, he found, or the Bedouins had found scrolls which Eshel bought 20 years ago, which are also from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And you know that last year there was a big media news that they had been found by the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it had not been from Qumran. This had been fragments from the Bar Kokhba caves in the Nahal Hefa. And these are small fragments which now fitted to the so-called minor prophet scroll, which they had been found in the 50s. So yes, I believe there are still hopefully big excitements, but what we have is enough. It shows how good the Bible is transmitted, and it brings us to become witness of the time of Jesus. And this is enough. This is so many material to work on. It's still not finished by the scholars.
Yeah. I think we got the question back again. I thought it is a matter of the New Testament. So that would be going back to the minority text and majority text. Let's is it the New Testament? You want to talk about that? Which is better?
Okay, but this is now a big fighting. What we call the textus receptus. This is the majority text. This is the question: how trustful? Not. Okay, that's not right. We do it another way. In the year 1516, Erasmus from Rotterdam printed the New Testament in Greek for the first time. He chose some manuscripts he could borrow in Basel. They came from the 9th to the 12th century. That had been not the best text of these times. It was typical Byzantine text. He used that and he printed his famous New Testament in Greek and Latin. And this edition of Erasmus, exactly for 500 years ago, had been used by Martin Luther. Then he had been captured after the Council of Worms.
Mm-hmm.
The meeting.
Yeah.
He was taken as a prisoner to the Wartburg. In 11 weeks, he translated the New Testament. He used this Greek New Testament. This is the same Greek New Testament William Tyndale used, which later came into the Matthew Bible, Bishop Bible, and then, of course, the King James Version or the King James Bible. So all the Geneva Bible, in English, the Geneva Bible of the French, and so on, all depends on the text of Erasmus. This text is called the Textus Receptus, the Textus which is accepted by everybody, and this is what you call the majority text, because the majority of the manuscripts have this text, but this is a text from the medieval times. And it was shocking for many people that a scholar, his name is Constantine Tischendorf, in the 19th century went to the St. Catherine Monastery and he found the famous Codex Sinaiticus. And this total copy of New Testament is 600 years older than the manuscripts which Erasmus used. And yes, there are differences in this text. And he was shaking on this Textus Receptus or majority text. And modern translations today are using the Nestle-Aland text, which is based on the Tischendorf findings and new findings. Of course, if you're going more back in history, there will be smaller number of manuscripts than like in medieval times. This is logical. So, but these texts are older. And Tischendorf said, if you have a text which is much older and much closer to the time when the New Testament was written, the chance that something had been changed had been much smaller. So if this man is asking me, for me, the minority text and is the better text, not the Textus Receptus, but the text which is today founded and where you can see if you have a good translation, they have in the footnotes the older text, and always speaking about Sinaiticus and Vaticanus is reading this and this, so you get an impression. Okay, one verse only to make it clear, which is very important. It's only one letter. If you're reading Luke chapter 2, the story of the angels, they came to the shepherds and they're saying, how it's in English, glory the name of God. And can you look at Luke 2, was ist das? Lukas 2, 14 is this? It's right. You will see it.
I'm going there right now.
Okay, reading the part. Here's eine Bibel hier vorne.
Luke 2, what verse?
It is 14. I'm not sure in the moment in my head.
Glory to God in the highest. And on
exactly. That's right. Yes, please read it. Yes, read it.
Yeah, glory to God in the highest. On earth, peace to all men whom his favor rests.
Yeah, but what translation are you reading? What kind of translation?
I'm reading NIV.
Yeah, which one?
NIV, a New International Version, I think it is. I could read King James.
Exactly. Take King James 16:11 if you have.
Okay, glory to God in the highest, on earth, peace, goodwill toward men.
Okay, you see, this is the difference. there's a difference in the text. And
Yeah.
in the Latin Bible, there's another explanation. They're sending glory to God as the highest, and peace on earth by the people who are of good willness. So this is totally different. It's only one letter in the Greek. If this letter is missing in the Greek, like Tischendorf found it in the Codex Sinaiticus and Vaticanus and the other old papyri today, you have translate that these that the how said. Can you read the new version again? I don't have it in my head in English.
Yeah, I'll read the new version. Logan, put up the.
Yeah, put it on the screen, please.
Well, let's see if
To
he's
have
got
the right expression.
Glory to God in the highest, on earth, peace to men on whom his favor rests.
Yeah, on whom his favor rests. That's right. That means these are the chosen people who are becoming born again Christians. They can become peacemakers.
Yeah, that's the.
But if you have the S in the text, you have translate and peace on earth. So it's a prophecy that everybody will have peace on earth. But this is not true. In the time when Jesus was born, it was also not true, because shortly after he was born, they killed the babies of Bethlehem because Herod wanted not to have a new king on the throne. So the peace is only promised to the people who become followers of Jesus and God. So this is a big, and the minority text is saying this, and the majority text is saying peace for everybody. So this is a nice example to show this.
Logan, can you put both of those up side by side? I never knew this. So one letter, one letter,
yes,
makes the difference.
But now we're on the New Testament, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Can you put the other one up at the same, or put it in the same? Copy it and put it in the same piece there.
You can take out my face and use the screen for the text.
Yeah, we'll see what he can do here.
Okay, but it's really okay to go to the Dead Sea Scrolls. You know, my mentor, Professor Himsinger, he's one who could show that Tischendorf was totally right. Because if you read the Greek text, you have to ask who is the subject and who is the object. And it was a text from the Thanksgiving scroll who helped Hunsinger to discover that it means that God is the one who is acting and the man is the object. Yeah, this is not clear in the Greek text, but in the Hebrew, where you have the same expression in the Dead Sea Scrolls, what is meaning that the peace of God is resting on the people of his favor. This is, and shortly before he died, he told me, Alex, look, in every translation today, they took it because this is real Hebrew behind the Greek text. So, but it's not good Greek. So it's you understand that they took off the one letter S from the word eudokia in Greek to make it sound better, but it changed the meaning.
Yeah, I never knew that before. So
okay.
NIV would be glory to God in the highest heaven, on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests. So that's the Tischendorf. Is that the Tischendorf?
Exactly.
And then King James says, glory to God in the highest heaven, on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests. Well, that's
this is the New King James version. It's the same. But if you go in the 1611 or in the old ones, there you see that there will be peace on earth by the people. This is the translation. So you see, this is a small difference. We could tell more about, but this is New Testament. So we will make a new section about the New Testament next time.
Yeah, we have another question coming in. Is it Rude Regnar? According to Dr. Bill Casper, there are fragments of the New Testament among the Dead Sea Scrolls. What is your opinion?
Okay, this theory is very old. It was done by a Spanish scholar. His name was O'Callaghan in 1972, and a good friend of mine, Professor Carsten Peter Tiede, he was the German promoter of this. It's a very small fragment. It's from the cave number 7. It's called 7Q5. And he thought, O'Callaghan and also Professor Tiede, it could be from the Gospel of St. Mark. If this should be true, this would be the oldest existing copy fragment of the New Testament. But the fragment is very small. Logan, can I tell you, can you put in the internet 7Q5? You will find this fragment many times in the internet and perhaps put on the screen so the people have the impression about what we're speaking. It's only one small fragment. What you really can read clear in this fragment is the Greek word kai, that means and. And on this small fragment to depend such a theory that the New Testament was under the Dead Sea Scroll is not working. Professor Emmanuel Puech, he now showed that this fragment is from the book of Enoch, which is a biblical book in the Ethiopian Bible, and that it's not from the New Testament. Because there's one thing more, which perhaps Dr. Kappa was the name, didn't tell.
Dr. Cooper.
Dr. Cooper, you have to look how old is the script. And this writing is not later than 30 AD, if you know a little bit of paleography. And when I was sitting together with Frank Cross in Harvard, he asked me, Alex, do you believe that the St. Mark Gospel was written in 30 AD, still at the days when Jesus was living? And this question is really good. And the fragment is too old to be a part of the New Testament. I would hope we would have such a fragment from these times. That would be a big confessment for the New Testament. But to be honest, we don't have. Still today, the fragment P52 with a part of John 18 in the New Testament is still today the oldest. It depends how you date, 100, 120, some say 170. That's the oldest we have.
I think what is interesting is that this type of writing will help with the dating, the type of materials, and then the ink. I had never thought about the fact that they could figure out where the ink came from. So there's a lot of science behind, of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I actually was able to go. You helped me to get in there and to have that meeting. And I'm trying to think of her name, where we went. I can't think of her name right now, but she was the head of that area where they did the photography.
The man of the photography is Shai Halevi, the Russian boy who's doing the photographs, and the lady who was the head of the conservation department. She's just had been going in pension. Her name is Pnina Shaw, and now it's Joseph Uziel. Yep. If you had been so friendly to buy me a copy of the new National Geographic magazine. You can see Pnina Shaw is inside in the magazine. Her picture is there inside, and also the man in the photo studio. I just sent him the photo, and he was very amazed. He said to me, Alex, help me to get a copy that I'm the National Geographic magazine. Yes, it was very nice to help you to go there inside, because I also asked Pnina to show you, and you used it in one of your videos, to show you some very important Dead Sea Scrolls. He gave, you remember? And and the oldest copy of the book of Exodus. Okay, you have the same problem like me. Go and drink, I tell the people. So when Tim Mahoney went into the laboratory of the Israeli department, I asked the lady of the conversation department to put some very important scrolls for him. And there was the Psalm scrolls. And I forgot to answer one question you had earlier. You asked, why is the name why is in some scrolls they're using the Paleo-Hebrew script? We have one scroll that's called from the book of Leviticus. The whole book is written in Paleo-Hebrew. Paleo-Hebrew is the kind of Hebrew you used in the time of King David and King Solomon. But what is very nice to see, you have several scrolls like the famous Psalm scrolls from Cave 11. There's the name of God always written in the 4 letters, JHWH, the name of God, written in the Paleo-Hebrew. And I would say it has to do with the commandments, that God gave the order in the commandments that you are not allowed to use the name of God in a non-spiritual way, or only to say, oh God, something like this, so that you are forced, if you're using the word of God, that you, for example, are praying, so that you're not using it about thinking, because it's the only commandment which has a curse. They are standing that the one will be punished who's using the name of God without paying attention to the word of God. So they used the Paleo-Hebrew letters so that every reader who was able to read could see, pay attention, the name of God is coming, you're not allowed to use it. And you know, till today, Jews are not saying, not don't pronounce this word. They use another word for it. It's called Adonai. Adonai means my Lord. And the ultra-Orthodox, they even don't use the word Adonai, because this is now the word of God. They are saying Hashem, the name. So if you take the cover of the National Geographic and put it in the screen, perhaps you can go a little bit more on it. Yes. Okay, I think the people can see that there. Let me see, where is it? Go into the text. This is go. You can open. No. Can you open the story?
Yeah.
You will have a page where they have lightened the word of God.
Okay, I'm saving pages. I wanted to show you first. Let me just show you. There's
This was exactly. This is Pina Shaw, and this is Tanya Traeger on the other side. These are the only ladies who are allowed to touch the Dead Sea Scrolls, and this is a conversation department. It was built up to do the conversation of the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is Shai Halevi. He is still working all the time in a totally dark room. It's a small room. I think. Let me see, around 7 square meters, perhaps. No window, and he's the flashlightings are coming from different angels, and he's doing 28 pictures from both sides. He's mixing all the pictures then together in the computer, and it's, if you put 28 and 28 pictures together, you will have 57 pictures, and then is this a new picture with the scholars can work. Now this is one of the scrolls become ready for the exhibition. I must tell you the truth. This is not the original one. It's a fake one they have photographed, because when the journalists came and show how they are preparing the scrolls, they never do it with the original ones. They have a replica to do it, and even National Geographic was not allowed to photograph the original one. But
I think,
yeah, it's true.
I think I got the original one, didn't I?
You got okay. But go ahead. There's one page from the Psalm scroll where they have in light red, they have said they did a shining so that the people can see that there is the name of God.
I'm trying to get there.
Okay, I thought it is. I only have the PDF. I'm not sure. Perhaps I'm doing a mistake. Okay, nevertheless, if the people will buy the National Geographic, if I can make an advertisement, I don't know how good the text is, but there you can see on the scrolls how the name of God is written different in Paleo-Hebrew, in Old Hebrew. I hope this is now answering the question of the man.
Well, I can't seem to find the Psalm scroll.
Okay, I'm very sorry. I have to speak about my mobile phone. Otherwise, I would have put the picture on there.
So this just came out. Why is this important? It's 75 years since their historic discovery. 75 years.
Exactly. This is a very wonderful year to make the anniversary of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And it's so important still today. There are so many conspiracy theories about the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Vatican is suppressing them and things like this. This is nonsense. These scrolls are the biggest adventure of all the times, the biggest archaeological discovery, because it's giving us that the text is trustful transmitted. It's make us to eyewitness of the time of Jesus, and open the windows in the time of Jesus, and you see how Jews lived at these times, and this is totally amazing, and yeah, it's fantastic. It's really a gift from God for us today.
Okay, so Logan, go ahead and put that image up, Logan.
Okay. Now it's very interesting. Okay, this is the fragment of Mark, the small fragment, 7Q5, or what they are calling this could be a fragment of St. Mark Gospel, but it's too small and it's too early. So only a limited number of scholars would say this could be of the New Testament. There are some, but the majority don't believe it. Even evangelical scholars don't agree with the theory.
Yeah. One person asked here, let's see, they found apocrypha fragments in the cave, which are in some Bibles like Nick and others. Is it a question? Why are they not accepted for the Bible in general? That's the question.
Okay, the book of Enoch is very important. If you read the letter of Jude, in New Testament, you have one verse of the book of Enoch is cited there. And the book of Enoch is in the Ethiopian Bible. And you have many copies in Qumran from the book of Enoch. So it must be a very important book in the time of Jesus and before. And people have used this book, but it was not accepted as a, how to say it, as a book which was inspired by the Holy Ghost. So this is the reason, because even, you know, we are working with several canons, we saying. So the Reformation is using the Hebrew books. The Catholic Church are using the Septuagint books, and the New Testament books, of course, from the Greek New Testament. So these canons are different. And then there are books which are only in the Latin Bible, like the books of Esdra, for example, or the 3rd and 4th Maccabees. So these are not books which belong to the Bible, but they had been put into the medieval Bibles. And by the New Testament, it's called a letter of Laodicea, which we have in the Vulgata text, in the Latin text. And it was a discussion which book belonged to the inspiration of the Bible. And I think that the choosing of the confessment of the Hebrew canon and the New Testament without the book of Laodicea is very good, because these texts, if you read them, they can explain each other. But if you go to the Apocryphon text, they sometimes have theories like the about the purgatorium. You know, purgatorium, the kind of hell.
Yeah.
This is also coming from the Apocryphon. So this is true that it's not included into the Bible. One has to understand, to have a Bible like this one. This is the famous Erasmus I have here, the edition from which was used by Martin Luther, and it's a book with here and here, and the texts are between the covers. But in the old days, it had been scrolls. So you had to decide which scroll you have to read in the service and which scroll you can read, for example, in the Bible seminary. This is a difference. You only have to read the Holy Scroll in the service. So there's a nice expression in Hebrew, which scroll makes your hands unclean. These are the Holy Scrolls, because then if it's such a holy book, you are totally unclean if you touch them. So this was, they had to separate, to say this you can read in the church or in the service or in the synagogue, if you speak about the Hebrew text, and the others are nice to read, but not accepted as books who are inspired by the Holy Ghost. And you see, yes, the canon is different by the denominations. The Catholic have a little bit different one, and the Ethiopians have another one. But I believe that the kind we have, what is in the King James Bible, is a very good.
We have a question by Lily. We're kind of coming down to a close here. Dr. or Alexander or Mr. Schick, it's actually, say your teacher was Karsten Thied. Did he think the fragment from the Magdalene College was the oldest text of the New Testament?
Okay, Professor Carsten Thiede was Carsten Thiede was not my teacher; he was my friend, and he died just in the moment when we worked on the book together. And yes, you're right. This is the famous scholar who also thought that the Magdalene text, which is called the Jesus Papyri, could be the oldest text of the New Testament. I think the book was called at this time the Eyewitness from the time of Jesus. And because I was a friend of him, I sometimes disagreed with him. And he was a good papyrologue. But sometimes the thesis, or he was a very good believer, and he hoped to find fragments of the New Testament which could prove the Testament is very old. But sometimes he had a theory, and he said the theory is a fact. And we always said, stop a little bit, stop. It could be, but it's not 100% proven that it will be. So still today, there's a big discussion about the text of the Magdalene, if it's really the oldest text of the New Testament. Not, I would say the majority of the scholars is not accepting this theory. I have to confess, even if Thiede was my good friend or a friend of mine.
Well, I'd like to talk about...
But may I just make one clarification, Tim? Mm-hmm. The people have the impression if you have a text which is very old, then everybody would believe that the Bible is true. I don't believe this. I don't believe that you can convince people if you can say, look, this Bible was printed in the year 10 years after Jesus had been the resurrection, for example, written. They wouldn't believe it. It's the question of the heart. This is exactly what happened with the miracles which Jesus did. Sometimes the people are telling to me, oh, if I could see one miracle, I will become a Christian. I said, you won't become a Christian, because the faith doesn't depend on miracles. The faith depends that you see that you are a sinner and that you need forgiveness by God. And you don't need miracles to believe in Jesus. You need the forgiveness of sins to become a believer and follower of Jesus. So the hunting after the text to say we could prove that agnostics will follow Jesus, I'm not convinced that this will happen. Some will be persuaded or will be convinced, that's true. But this is not the test case. The test case is the heart. If you go inside your heart and you accept that you are a sinner and that God is greater than you and that he will be your judger, then you will follow him, and then you will get the trustful of the scripture in your heart. Sorry to say, but this, or to add, but this I think is important.
That's very good. I'd like just to talk about something very interesting about Germany. If we think about Germany and God's, I mean, how Germany has had its role in the Bible with the Gutenberg press, right? Which is in Germany, right? And not only that, but then you've got Martin Luther as well. Then you also have higher criticism coming out of Germany. So Germany has had this battle with the Bible. Any thoughts upon that? I mean, when you think about how major influences in Christianity have happened in the land of Germany, where you're from, any thoughts about that? Then we had the Nazis, and the whole battle with the nation of Israel and the Holocaust. And so we've had this interesting dynamic in Germany.
It is the land of the Reformation, as you said, but it's also the land of the unbelievers, if you see today what's happening in Germany. Mm-hmm. But even Martin Luther, even if I'm a Lutheran from my heart, because the moment that he saw that the faith is only given by the grace of the Lord and you can't pay anything to become a follower of Jesus, this is very impressive by the work of Martin Luther. But you see, even Martin Luther has a critical opinion about the New Testament. If you open a facsimile of the famous New Testament, which came out 500 years ago in September 1522, which is now the 500th anniversary. I can show. I have a copy here. Then you can see what Martin Luther did. He put the table of contents in the New Testament. I hope it's working like this. It's not the original one. This would be $2 million. This is only a copy which is 150 years old, but a very nice one. It looks like similar. Okay. Upsala, let me show. Upsala, let me see. Okay. Here you can read the New Testament, Deutsch. There was no printer on it, only Wittenberg, but everybody knew this is the bird from Wittenberg who did this. And then you open the book and you see the content of the letters. Upsala, let me see if it. Oh, yeah. And you see, this is numbered. Here you have a gap, and then you have the 4 last books of the New Testament, like the Apocalypse of John, the letter of Jude, the letter of Jacob, and the letter of the Hebrews. They have no numbers, so they had been split up from the rest of the text, because Martin Luther said these books, yes, he would take them out of the New Testament because they are the letter of not Galata, let me say, of. Now it's very late in Germany, mein Herr. give me 1 second, please. Die Strohhenne-Epistle, he's saying. This is, epistle is letter. Strohhahn means...
It's almost midnight for you. So for the rest of us,
Yeah.
it's a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Okay, Strohhenne-Epistle, that means it is a letter from Jacob where you can read, you have to do something works to become praised by God as a Christian. But he said, no. The big finding of a Reformation was, you are saved by grace. So he doesn't accept any letter where standing in the Bible, you must do something to become a good Christian, because he had so much problems with the Catholic Church, who said, pay for this and you become, you can get out of the hell. So this was the reason. But if you read the New Testament, the last books, they are standing, if you're a Christ and you're following Jesus, of course you will have good things to do. Otherwise, you will say, oh, I rest down, I'm a Christian, I don't need to do anything. So here, Luther became a little bit problematic, so he became the first critical guy in this kind. And so the liberals today can depend on Martin Luther and saying, look, Martin Luther was the first who was using historical critical method to claim that these books are not really inspired. And you are right, because of the time of the French Revolution and the people, the agnostics at these times, Goethe and other people who said, we can't believe what is standing in this New Testament. These are all miracles. These are books from the old time. And then they said, everything you can know from Jesus could be placed on one small postcard. All others are legendary fairy tales, myths and legends. So we don't need this. And this was the kind of thinking who came very much in the 19th century. One scholar who who was fighting against this liberal position was Tischendorf. This was the reason why he was looking after the oldest text. He thought, if I can show them how old the texts are, this liberal position must be changed. He found very old proofs for the New Testament, and it's very sad. He's only remembered as a Bible hunter, but not as a defender of faith. This is totally forgotten today, because the liberals are saying, okay, it's a nice old books, but it's all legends inside there. So this is a traumatic story, and the most famous scholar is Bultmann, Rudolf Bultmann. Rudolf Bultmann, who was saying Jesus was not resurrected. And he said Jesus was become again to life in character, in word. So that means if I listening Blue Suede Shoes from Elvis Presley or Love Me Tender, Elvis is living again because I hear his voice and his music. And so I'm saying, if you preach Jesus in the service, in this moment, Jesus will rise up. But in reality, the flesh had been gone away on the bones anywhere in Jerusalem in the tomb. He never was waken up by God, and that there was never a resurrection. So these are the two kinds of thinkings. And sadly to say, in Germany, the most heavenly position, even till today in the Catholic Church, is a liberal, historical, critical thinking about the Bible. And this is for me a big tragedy. I know some of my friends who say, look, this is the place where we sat in the university as young people, and go to the crown. There you can see, shattered my faith. It is totally destroyed by the university, by the modern kind of reading the Bible, because it was only used as a book, as a normal book, but not as the book from God.
Well, I just wanted to thank you so much, Alexander. I mean, the whole idea behind the Historical Faith Society here is to help support the work that you're doing and others. That you're really a preserver of biblical history, as you've had these and a champion to basically share with the next generation that we don't have a lot of the things that are criticisms against the Bible are just points of view that have an answer to them, and they need to be answered. And you've done a good job of doing that. And we're getting people that want to say, we want to have you back and talk some more. And maybe what we could do is have a part 2, and we could get into Tischendorf. I think, what if we had a series on Tischendorf this year, and come back and we'll explain what his mission was, what he found, and there's a verse too I was going to throw up. I wanted to put this verse up. For we are God's handiwork. This is in Ephesians. Now, if you read, you should read some of these the verses prior to this, but for we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. So when I've read this, there are things that we are supposed to do, just like you and I, even though we've come to faith in Jesus Christ, afterwards, there's things we're supposed to do. And I've been making these films. We created a Historical Faith Society. You've been working on the exhibits for the Bible and Qumran. And I think all of us have something that God has called us to do. In fact, he's prepared it for us before the beginning of time, So anyway, any last thoughts, Alexander? I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you and your work. And we'd like to have you come back. And maybe sometime this year, we'll have you back and we'll talk more about this. And maybe get more into Tischendorf and just understand who was this man, because I know you have a passion for him.
A huge passion, because Tischendorf was for me, as a young boy, asking how trustful the Bible is transmitted. He was the same, let me say, so much influence like the Dead Sea Scrolls. What the Dead Sea Scrolls are for the Old Testament, the work of Tischendorf is for the New Testament. And it's very sad that today there are so many silly theories about Tischendorf and his work, about the minority and majority text. There's a huge discussion about only King James 16, King James 11 against modern translation and things like this. And there it's good to help the people to have a better understanding. And Tischendorf was really, we would say today, an evangelical scholar who did a wonderful job. He was a tremendous scholar, speaking so many ancient languages. And he worked all his life only to help the people following Jesus to have a foundation, to have the best text of the New Testament. And this fascinated me very much. And I was very happy that I could work many, many years with the original papers from Tischendorf, which are still in the hands of the family. And I received the permission to publish. My book is just translated in English. It's nearly ready. But we are looking for a publisher. Perhaps a publisher, if I may ask, is listening to this show. I would be very much appreciated if you could write Tim Mahoney an email. I would happy to send you the ready translation for my book about Tischendorf. So perhaps we could make it for the next part 2. And I'm very happy if you invite me again. I'm very sorry that my English is not my native language. I sometimes jump in my head between German and English, but I hope you could understand me. But it's very, very helpful in heaven. These problems of language will no longer exist, and this makes me very happy.
Yeah, that's good. well, thank you again, and thanks for staying up late. I want to say that Historical Faith Society is really the community within Patterns of Evidence Foundation. And, if you like the work that we're doing, you can support us, Patterns of Evidence Foundation. You can look it up on, and you can support, and that helps us to find ways to support other work like what's going on. So yes, we'll have to talk more about this book and see what needs to happen. But we'd like to have you here, you and Caroline, come, if God willing, and come along and do a book exhibit and a tour. That's what we have to look at. So we're very excited about that. And we don't know what the future holds, but I just have a sense that you're supposed to come to America sometime and share. And we're going to talk some more about, because you've been committed to this for such a long time. You have some very fascinating interviews that need to get out, and we need to make something of that as well. I'd like to to talk to you about that as well. So we will talk again. Listen, everyone, I want to thank you. This has been a fascinating conversation with Alexander Schick. We're very excited that he's been a part of this. And I want to thank all of you. Tell your friends, and we want to try to grow the Historical Faith Society and have more exciting events like this. As if you watched the Caldwells a month ago, They had some health issues that they couldn't make the live event, but we're going to bring them back and get a live event. And I think this next month we're going to be talking about Cecil B. DeMille. And Cece DeMille, I went to meet with the family and have had a wonderful friendship with them. They produced the original 10 Commandments movie that you all have seen, I'm sure.
Oh, wow.
And so we're going to have, I go to visit and I look at the actual documents that Cecil B. DeMille touched and talked with the granddaughter, and we're going to get the inside story on that. We got to get hopping on that because there's just so much work to be done, but that's going to be coming our next focus. That's my plan. So God bless you all. God bless you, Alexander.
We thank you very much. And Caroline and myself, we just become great ears. He really has original tables of the 10 Commandments.
Oh. Did I say that? I didn't mean to.
Would be wonderful to know.
Yeah. Well, I didn't touch those. I touched some other documents. So, yeah.
I thank you very much for the invitation. It was really a pleasure and honor, and we're pleased that God bless your work with all you're doing in America. I guess we have the same problems like us in Germany. People are struggling in faith. Gender and things like this are becoming more and more influential. But we will still hold up the flag of Jesus and say, look, if you're speaking about the Bible, you should know what is standing in the Bible and how good it's transmitted. And then we can discuss.
Yeah,
this is the best we can do. God bless you very much.
God bless you. Bye-bye now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.